All right, I believe we're live. So, okay, let's do this. All right, so today's date, September 19th, 2018, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, most Will Buchanan, and as we always do on How the Frack We Got Here, we try to take the week, the interest, the news, everything that's happened, bundle up into one little big old shindig and try to make sense of it all. So, before we do get cracking on this shindig, I do gotta say this. This is an adult podcast, which means of adult nature. Adult language will be used, so viewer discretion is advised. Now, take about the next 3 seconds to make the necessary adjustment, and yeah, okay, so we're there. So, thank you guys for all sticking on here. Really appreciate it. So, I know usually whenever we do start the how the frack we got here, I usually start with Agent Orange. For all those who don't know Agent Orange is, I'm talking about Trump. How can I explain this sumbitch? Okay, for all those that don't know meteorology is the study of weather, okay? So, I'm going to go ahead and for those who don't understand about Florence, which Florence, if you don't know what that is or who that is, Hurricane Florence was a major storm that did hit North Carolina. I think it was like over at least 45 reported dead so far. Close to $1 billion in damages, livestock loss, people, displaced, things of that nature. Me and myself, I've experienced flooding. I've actually volunteered in hurricane relief, things of that nature. So I know what it's like to have something that in that case be lost, deal with the insurance company, things of that case. But nothing today. I mean, to explain, well, actually, there's no way to explain this. Let me just go ahead and actually throw this video up because he explained, because this is how Trump acts when he comes across natural disasters. I'm going to just go ahead and play this first. And yeah.
Hurricane, one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water. Rarely have we had an experience like it. And it certainly is not good. Florence has been a nasty one, a big one, like that area certainly has never seen before.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Apparently, Hurricane Florence is very big and very wet. Like every other hurricane that's ever occurred. Now, usually I would stop there, but Trump decided to double down. And by double down, I mean he wanted to tell South Carolina what to expect.
First of all, Henry, thank you, and you're doing a fantastic job. Everybody, the job that you're doing, the coordination. We just left North Carolina. They got hit really, really hard, and they are working, and all of that water is coming your way. A lot of people don't know that. They assume you look outside and you see this beautiful weather, but over the next couple of days, it's going to get rough in South Carolina. So the federal government is behind you. We have Lindsey Graham here. We have Tim. Where's Tim and Lindsey? Tim Scott. They have
And again, I never want to make fun of meteorologists. I understand it's a rough job. I understand that, you have to find ways of explaining, because not only are you actually, you're dealing with a lot of data, you're dealing with satellite information. So I never knock a meteorologist because, number one, it's an attempt to predict the weather. So I'm never going to knock them for that. But Trump trying to explain floods and how floods work makes me feel like every brain cell in my, honestly, I felt brain cells committing haikus in my head right now, because he just told South Carolina to expect flooding. Okay, I don't know if Agent Orange has ever been provided a map, because South Carolina, for those that don't know, and if you don't know by now, please, oh please, go back and get the rest of your education, because you are severely lacking in that. But for the rest of us, we all know where South Carolina sits. So, of course, if North Carolina gets flooded, what do you think is going to happen in South Carolina? I mean, aside from the fact they're right next door to each other. So, I kind of feel like the National Weather Service, when they speak to Trump, I'm almost certain that okay, sorry about that, guys. Talked about Trump, and next thing I know, he comes after me. But you know what? We're going to keep this ball rolling. So I can only think that the National Weather Service, when they talk to Trump, has to use pictures, words, puppets, crowns. I mean, something, because you can't talk to him like a normal fucking adult, because you see the way he talks to him, like he's not the only one, because that's his crowd base. His crowd base speaks in the same in the same way. You know, Hurricane Florence is very big and very wet. Have you ever talked to one of his followers? Well, he was right about Hurricane Florence. It was very big and it was very wet. A sixth grader talking to another sixth grader, because that's how it sounds. And that tells me so much about the guy who's commander in chief. Because if you have a deuce who does not understand basic meteorology, then you can understand why the next couple of subjects we're going to go over make a whole lot of sense. But for all those who are watching, especially if you're in Hurricane Florence, hopefully you guys got out of that area. Hopefully you're safe. And hopefully you guys, like I said, for all those that have lost people or things or anything of that nature, hopefully everything will work out for you guys. Just for the simple fact of the matter is just that, you know, nature is undefeated. I mean, take it from a guy who saw 110 mile per hour wind pick up a car like it was a Tonka truck and then fling it about a good 2 football fields. That's when you just sit there and go, no. I'm just being honest. That when you see something like that happen, next time someone tells you that something's coming, you're getting the fuck out the way. That's just being honest. But speaking of Trump, which I know I don't want to stick to him on, I don't want to stick to him too long on this. Reason being is because now, for all those that don't know, again, this is again one thing I did want to speak about, just because it came up for me actually a lot, was that of Judge Brett Kavanaugh. So if you don't know who Kavanaugh, if you don't know who Judge Brett Kavanaugh is, he's the nomination to the Supreme Court, because that's who Trump wants inside. Because, you know, Trump only picks the very best people, you know, the very best people. But anyway, if you don't know the story by now, Kavanaugh has actually been accused of sexual misconduct when he was in high school. So, you know, when they asked Donald Trump, I keep on wanting to say Agent Orange so bad just because it fits the son bitch. But when they asked Agent Orange how he felt about it, this is what he honestly had to say. And don't be surprised if you're shocked.
Is one of the finest people that I've ever known. He's an outstanding intellect.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's try that one again. Sorry, guys. Let's see here, because it did not like that. Uh-oh. Let's try it again. So I'm on that video. The one thing I did actually want to point out about that was that Trump turned around and sat there and, of course, did his little line. For all those that don't know what the line is, the line that he loves to say so freaking much is that he believes that Kavanaugh is the best person. And it's interesting for a guy like Kavanaugh to have this much dirt on him. I mean, because again, we are in the era of the Me Too movement. We are in the era of people who have been victimized who are now coming forward despite the time. So let me try the video one more time so you guys get the full effect.
Kavanaugh is one of the finest people that I've ever known. He's an outstanding intellect, an outstanding judge, respected by everybody. Never had even a little blemish on his record. The FBI has, I think, gone through a process 6 times with him over the years where he went to higher and higher positions. He is somebody very special. At the same time, we want to go through a process. We want to make sure everything is perfect, everything is just right. I wish the Democrats could have done this a lot sooner because they had this information for many months, and they shouldn't have waited till literally the last days. They should have done it a lot sooner. But with all of that being said, we want to go through the process. One thing I will say is that, as I understand it, Judge Kavanaugh spent quite a bit of time with Senator Feinstein, and it wasn't even brought up at that meeting, and she had this information. So you would have thought certainly that she would have brought it up at the meeting, not wait till everything's finished and then have to start a process all over again. But with all of it being said, we want to go through a full process. I have great confidence in the U.S. Senate and in their procedures and what they're doing, and I think that's probably what they're going to do. They'll go through a process and hear everybody out. I think it's important. I believe they think it's important. But again, he is one of the great intellects and one of the finest people that anybody has known. You look at his references, I've never seen anything quite like it. So they'll go through that process and we'll get it
done. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just cut it off right there. Reason being, some things we need to clear up. You're right, Angie. He's not smarter than a fifth grader. You're right, BJ. He probably would think Jerry Sandusky is a fine daycare provider. He probably would. But here's the things that Trump doesn't mean. Trump does actually, well, like I said, he's a con man. But first and foremost, he was not vetted 6 times by the FBI. Contrary to popular belief, when you're a judge, you only get vetted once. Because I was looking into that. So to be a judge, you basically just have to be cleared. Basically, it's an FBI and it's an NSA background check. Once those background checks are completed and nothing comes up and you're not convicted of a felony, guess what? No problem being a judge. Same with the Supreme Court. Supreme Court just goes back over and they basically vet you for Supreme Court. No different than anybody else being on there. So about the whole thing about him being vetted by the FBI 6 times, bullshit. Again, great intellect. The guy went to a preparatory school, which I'm going to show in the next clip, is an all-boys school. And from the looks of this Georgetown preparatory school, it was known as a party school. There was more alcohol than diplomas being passed around, if you get my drift. So this is where Trump usually comes in and he tries to bump up people. And I honestly believe that this is what a con man does best. A con man highlights what he believes and he believes it. If you believe the lie and you are confident in the lie and that no one else can call you out on it or chooses not to call you out on it, and you keep repeating it and repeating it and repeating it, it eventually does sound like the truth, although far from it. I mean, granted, it's not a hit list playbook, but still, you see how it works on Trump's followers. So it's funny that he mentions Kavanaugh and he sits there and says he has no problem with him. However, going back to the person who accused him, has sat there and asked for an FBI investigation. So this is actually, and this is to answer your question, BJ, a while back. This is actually what has halted this is actually what halted the voting on nominating Kavanaugh, because there's already 3 people in the Supreme Court that have been accused of sexual misconduct. Clarence Thomas. Again, if we actually, and this is the message I want to talk about for a little bit, was just the simple fact of rape culture. We are literally the only, one of 3 countries who have laws against what a woman can and cannot do with her body, but 0 laws against what a man can do with his body. We are one of 3. Saudi Arabia, North Korea, and I want to say Dubai. I have to double check on that. But I definitely know Saudi Arabia and North Korea are definitely 2 other ones that have laws against what women can and can't do, but 0 laws against what a man can do. So again, this idea, and of course, Trump's a predator. And what annoys me so about Trump being a predator is the simple fact of the matter is that he has other people like Roy Moore. Roy Moore. Of all those guys who don't remember who Roy Moore, crap, can't think of his name. So basically, Roy Moore, he was actually running in Georgia. And remember when he was all set up to run and how the story came out that he was let's just say a fan of women a little too much, kind of on borderline under 13 and under. And of course, that story did derail him from being nominated to political office, and rightly so. But Roy Moore has decided to come out and support Kavanaugh and try to say, well, this is just the Democrats weaponizing allegations against Republicans. First of all, Republicans, let's keep one thing straight. You guys sat there and crucified Senator Al Franken for a picture he took when he was a comedian on the USO tour. You guys skewered him. I mean, there was no hearing. There was no committee. There was nothing on that fact. In fact, Senator Al Franken actually took the honorable route and left office. He didn't actually have to leave. And the Senate committee, albeit never voted on him to remove him, but Al Franken decided to step down. Now that's honorable. Now again, like I said, this whole culture of where if something happens to a woman or a man, and it's just looked upon as if, well, they were just, it's always white people. Let's just be honest. It's always white people. I know a lot of white people who do watch this are going, that's not me. We're not talking about y'all. Y'all are the ones still invited to the cookout. You're good. We're talking about the ones out there who see nothing wrong with the actions of these individuals and will brush it off as them being kids, adults, alcohol involved. They will pretty much, for a party that says that they want personal responsibility to be accepted, that they pass that buck along faster than Donald Trump in a Russian prostitute hotel. That man gets more golden showers than. Actually, let me not say that. That might be a little too far. But anyway, but the whole thing about this rape culture is, the reason why I wanted to talk about it was because the simple fact of the matter is just that it seems to be so. I'm not going to say ignored, but it's accepted. And that's the fucking problem. Because you've probably seen senators up there will sit there. And I mean, I posted this on my Facebook post not too long ago, where there was a collection of senator quotes where they sat there and said, well, if she was really into it, then there would be a chance she'd get pregnant. Maybe she shouldn't dress this way. Maybe she shouldn't act this way. It was fucking horrifying. Thank you, BJ. He was running in Alabama. Thank you for that. As a guy, I hate that. I hate the fact that, look, I honestly believe you never should force yourself on anybody. If a person don't like you, they don't like you. Trust me, there's somebody out there for you. But at the same time, if the person don't want your ass, then move the fuck on. There's no point to sit there and go so far, like Brock Turner, raping a girl who was unconscious, but the judge decided not to throw the book at him because that would ruin his chances. Just like there's 5 other cases out there where the judge was lenient on the boys who committed these acts, mind you, but because of their futures, he went light on them, and they were all white. You show me a case. I'm being dead honest. Show me a case to where a person of color is in the same position as a Brock Turner or Kevin or a Kavanaugh or Roy Moore, and tell me that he get the same treatment. And I'm not saying that he should. Honestly, he should get the book thrown at him. But it seems that if they're white and they're young, they always think they have a future, and therefore we shouldn't ruin that. But you'll ruin a person of color faster than a policeman can. But the reason why I bring up Kavanaugh is, like I said before, his history, like I said, because you're going to such a place as the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court actually ruled a lot of historical cases, Roe versus Wade being one of them, because Roe versus Wade is being referenced so much because that led to making abortion safe. However you feel about it, women should have the option to do whatever they want with their bodies, but they should never be told what they can and cannot do. Because if a guy can, if you tell it, because I'm sorry, I'll be dead honest with you, just like birth control. Birth control to me is the same as Viagra. A woman shouldn't have to worry about paying out the ass for birth control for insurance if a guy can get his insurance covered under Viagra full price. So you're telling me I can get hard for free, but if a woman wants to make sure that she doesn't want to have an unwanted child, that she's got to pay more out of pocket, simply put, because she's a woman, but I'm cool because it's a man. That's bullshit. But again, like I said, it goes back to the culture of it goes back to that culture that needs to just die horribly. But again, let me not get too sidetracked. But pretty much Kavanaugh's record is coming into question. So this is the one thing I wanted to point out, because they're talking about his yearbook entries, which an anonymous person that was actually going to the same school as Kavanaugh actually wanted to make public. So this is what they said.
Through some of this for us. So why is this so important?
Yeah, so this is the 1983 yearbook for Brett Kavanaugh's senior class, and it really does allude in many of those entries to this hard partying, heavy drinking culture at Georgetown Prep that's just outside of DC in North Bethesda, Maryland. So one yearbook page, it's titled "These Funny Guys," there it is, and it contains several questionable captions, including, "Do these guys beat their wives?" Or actually, this first one says, "Prep parties raise questions of legality," 100 kegs or bust complete with pictures of kegs. Also, "Do these guys beat their wives?" And all signs there that there was a party culture at this school in the early 80s. Now, CNN saw a copy of this yearbook courtesy of a former student who wanted to stay anonymous, and that person's attorney told us why the former Georgetown Prep student said it was so important to get this yearbook out to the public.
The person who contacted me wanted to make sure that all information is available to the American people. It's not meant as an indictment or an attack against Judge Kavanaugh or the person who was accusing him. The only interest is in making sure that the American people have all information, as well as the representatives on Capitol Hill, so that they can make a fully informed decision on such a critical lifetime appointment to the United States Supreme Court.
So this anonymous Georgetown Prep student trying to get the yearbook out there, trying to disclose as much information as possible in advance, Jim, of this possible hearing that we might see if it goes forward on Monday. I bet there'll be a lot of questions about it.
And speaking of questions, Christine Blasey Ford, she claims that Kavanaugh's friend Mark Judge was in the room at the time of this alleged assault and might also be called to testify. His yearbook entries are equally interesting. He said a lot of things over the years. He's written a lot of things over the years. But what can you tell us about what he said in the yearbook?
Yeah, so some of his yearbook entries raising some questions, but just to be clear, he has denied that the incident ever happened. In fact, he told the Weekly Standard last week, "It's just absolutely nuts. I never saw Brett act that way." But like you said, some of his yearbook entries, they're drawing some question here. So he has entries in this yearbook, and he has this one right on his yearbook page that says, quoting Sir Noel Coward, "Certain women should be struck regularly like gongs." So Judge, in addition to this yearbook entry in the early 80s, he also wrote extensively about the hard partying culture at Georgetown Prep. He had one memoir that was entitled "Wasted: Tales of a Gen X Drunk," where he detailed his experience of extensive drinking at Georgetown Prep, where he even at one point in that memoir documents a Bart O'Kavanaugh, who he describes as getting sick in a car after a night of heavy drinking. And signs would point to maybe this alluding to Brett Kavanaugh, but that has not been confirmed. And really, Jim, Mark Judge writes about it, how his high school was swimming in alcohol, how he was shocked about some of the things that they got away with. So obviously, all of these will be points of questioning when this hearing, if it does happen on Monday. But some of these, entries in the yearbook raising some questions about that hard partying culture, as it seemed, at Georgetown Prep.
And will likely fuel calls for Mark Judge to testify in all of this. The Republicans want to limit it to just Kavanaugh and Ford, but there are folks saying that this Mark Judge should talk and say what he has to say.
Okay, so to pretty much put that in perspective, here's the reason why that Republicans, and it kills me, because here's my thing. If a woman is really making this up, number one, why does she want an FBI investigation? Because people who usually make up stories don't want a federal government institution to look into it unless it's true. At the same time, she says that someone else had witnessed it. So again, this hearing is going to happen. I mean, they say at this point, at the time of that news article, that it was still in speculation, that Republicans are trying to get this pushed through, because that means that the Supreme Court is literally leaning right. Because right now, the Supreme Court is kind of at a dead stop. But if they did add another conservative to the bench, that would mean that the Supreme Court has an overwhelmingly conservative majority. Now, that also means that they can go back and reverse decisions on historical cases. And like I said, meaning about the Roe versus Wade, I mean, you can go back to Brown versus the Board of Education. I mean, literally any other historical case can be reversed, and it has monumental repercussions behind those decisions. But if you have an overly leaning right conservative Supreme Court, that means that you can turn around and literally reverse things and basically take us and nearly put us back in the 50s. Angie, you're right, because I was going to bring that up. And just like Kavanaugh, and before, here's the funny thing, is this that, and I'm glad you brought up Bill Cosby. And hey, for anybody who's saying, like I've said about Bill Cosby, I have said this from Jump Street, because I sat there and said, all these women coming 40 years later about Bill Cosby, it may be true, it may not be true. But after 40 years, it becomes a he said, she said argument. But it should still be processed, followed to the extent of the law, and gone from there. Now, no matter how you feel about how the Cosby case went, it happened. You can take your way from it as far as the decision about him being finally charged with sexual assault, things of that nature, 40 plus years later. But the extent of them pursuing it, keep in mind, Bill Cosby was about to buy ABC. The man had enough money that he was about to buy a major news network. Now, you can argue that, the allegations came at a time when he was poised to buy it. You can sit there and say that, the Me Too movement actually has encouraged those who are victims of sexual assault to come forward. No matter how you cut the mustard on that, it did happen. That being said, Kavanaugh should be put to the same degree. But like I said, Republicans looking at midterms, which are next month. Right now, they're trying to get they're trying to get all their ducks in a row. They're trying to push a tax bill that is literally cutting more off at the middle and lower class. That at this point there won't be a middle class. They're trying to push that through. They're trying to get this guy nominated to the Supreme Court because they know if they're expecting this blue wave to happen in November, in which Democrats take the House and the Senate, which looks like it could possibly happen. But if the Democrats did take the House and the Senate, then Agent Orange knows his time is up, because then they can move forward with articles of impeachment and then impeach the president, as if they didn't have enough evidence to do that already. But again, Republicans treat Agent Orange like their sugar daddy. And for them, it's Christmas. So they're not going to impeach Trump anytime soon. Especially don't expect that from Senator Lindsey Graham, because that two-time and flipping bastard really ain't gonna do shit. He's too busy kissing the ring. Ted Cruz, the Latino Canadian immigrant trying to be a hardcore conservative, he's no better than Trump in that sense. But it is amazing to me how they're trying to sit there. And they're literally trying their hardest to sit there and not allow this to happen. And this is why I sit there and say there might be something going on. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that she's right or she's wrong, but I'm just saying when someone wants the FBI to look into it. What do they? I mean, they're pretty much showing their hand. It's like, if you think I'm lying, investigate it. And that to me says a lot. That to me says, okay, if they're wanting the FBI to look into this, and excuse me, and just like everybody else in Trump's administration, you gotta understand, Trump's administration is literally down to 4 people that are still there. 4 out of multiple staffers. I mean, his inner circle's gone for the most part. His lawyer and campaign manager have reportedly cooperated with Mueller, and the only people he's got left is like Pence and 3 other people. If this was a Celebrity Apprentice, I'm almost certain it's about to reach a series finale pretty soon. But that being as it may, the reason why Kavanaugh exists is because a culture exists. That good old boy mentality exists, and it's being perpetuated, especially in institutions of learning. Because not to say an all boys school is messed up, but I'm just saying these schools that have affluency, that have money, that have influence, always seem to be the most fucked up schools that actually produce these type of individuals. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, honestly, tell me if I'm wrong, but I've always seen that where, when they have that money, that influence, that power, and it just moves on to the next generation, then we wonder why the culture perpetuates, because the cycle just keeps continuing on and on and on like a broken washing machine. And you're right, Vaughn, there is no middle class, just who's broke at the moment. Well, actually, at this point, the income gap, which I will get into another day, but it is so wide. It is so wide at this point that you're right. There's honestly not a middle class anymore. It's almost like the middle class is about to be eviscerated. But that's for another day, because like I said, I don't want to take away too much of this, because the simple fact of the matter is just that I do want to go into two other things. Now, the other thing I wanted to go into, the second thing, was the Botham Jean case. Now, again, for all those that don't know or have been under a rock, Botham Jean was actually killed by Amber Geiger, an off-duty policewoman who gave the most BS excuse that a police officer can give for killing a black man. That she mistakenly shot a guy that she thought was in her apartment. The first time I heard that, I'm like, that is so full of shit. You murdered him. And it's like, well, the door was ajar. Come to find out, no, it wasn't. And then there was the rumor that was passed out about them knowing each other in a picture, which turned out not to be her. And this is my whole thing. And this is why I say I try to have a journalistic approach to this podcast. It's just that I don't put out anything that I can't back up from citation or publication, or at least I have the source. Because if anybody out there sits there and says, well, here's the picture, they knew each other. Really? Where'd you get that from? Was it properly cited? Was it backed up? Do you have multiple sources? I mean, this is basically journalism. And most people hear something and run with it. And I try not to do that on my podcast. Anything I do find, as you can see, will either be a video that's already been publicated, or it's just information I try to do, or information I try to find on my own with multiple sources. But as a small little rant, I can't stand when folks pass off information that's not validated or verified, because the whole thing about not knowing each other is honestly bullshit. She literally, for all intents and purposes, which I find so interesting about this case, is because just like every other case where a black man is killed by a law enforcement officer, it immediately becomes more about the victim than it does about the shooter. And in this case, this is so fucking cut and dry. I'm wondering why in the world it's still being talked about. Because again, she went to the wrong floor. She apparently barged her way in. Neighbors heard neighbors heard her yelling. And then next thing you know, she's hearing, you're hearing a victim scream. And it's easy to play the victim when you're holding the gun. But again, in this whole case, like I said, where this case gets really fucking murky right now, is where I like to call, it's character assassination. Now, for those that don't know what character assassination is, it is pretty much where the defense for the accused tries to sit there and paint a picture in court that the person who was the victim had in some way or form did something or equal up to something that led to their demise. The reason why I know that so well is because they tried to do that to my family, which is the case that one day I'll talk about in its entirety. But they try to do the same thing and try to blame the victim when it was the person that it was the accused the entire time. And that was the thing that honestly annoyed me. And that's, like I said, about character assassination, which I'm going to bring up this video, and Whoopi Goldberg actually has a very good point about it. And as soon as this video agrees with me, because, you know, we've been talking about Trump, so I'm not surprised if nothing works. So hang on, guys, as I'm doing this. You are right, BJ. It is victim shaming. It's character assassination. It is legally the best. It is legally a legal defense that they love to use. And you're right. You're right, Angie. She was trespassing, killing. It's fucking murder. And BJ, you're also right that the Republicans do it all the time. The Republicans do that all the time. Even Ted Cruz turned around and said, well, there's got to be more to the story. Really? What more to the story is there, Mr. Cruz? I mean, aside from the fact you're living a double life anyway, but still, what is there more about this story? And Whoopi Goldberg says it so well, and I'm going to let her tell you know, exactly what I want to say.
Byron Jean, and it keeps getting more crazy. He's the black man killed by a Dallas cop. She says she accidentally entered his apartment thinking it was hers and thought he was an intruder. But there are some big old holes in this thing.
Yeah.
There's so much more that we don't know. And the apartment itself, even going to the door, he had a red mat in front of it. Hers did not.
Well, she said she had a bunch of packages and couldn't see it.
Couldn't see. But the neighbors
she saw well enough to shoot him.
And the neighbors are saying, she says the door was ajar, yet the neighbors are saying they heard someone banging on the door saying, let me in, let me in.
Well, let me ask you this. If the door was ajar, you as a police officer don't know if there's 50 people in there or two. Right. Why didn't you call for backup before you pulled your weapon?
Exactly. It sounds like
there were disputes on whether it was ajar or not. There's a lot of
stuff. And then they tried to assassinate his character by saying, you know, they found marijuana in there.
Yeah.
So you telling me that somebody in their own house
can't smoke a
joint without fear of getting shot. Smoking while black?
Yeah, I know.
Or just being in your own apartment while black.
Well, so now you understand why people are taking a knee.
Yeah.
That's how easy. That's what we're talking about. That's what those guys are talking about. If you understand how random all this is, you know, when somebody says he didn't heed what I was saying to him, well, if we take your word, you're a silhouette to him in his apartment. If he had shot you, he'd be hanging from somewhere by now. What is going on?
She was the intruder. She was the intruder.
Yep. Whoopi said it best. And it's interesting about that where it's Whoopi said it so well. And I know I brought this up on the previous podcast about this, where the NRA because I know I stomached and watched NRA TV. It is the most pro-gun network cult show I've ever seen outside of Joel Osteen. Because a guy who smiles like this is really not a guy I want to talk to, because he smiles so big. And hello, dear friends. Hello, dear friend. I can't. That's a cult to me. But Whoopi said it best. Whoopi said it best. So the fact of the matter is, had he had the gun, he had a gun, and someone else coming into his home, and he shoots a cop. Oh, trust and believe, he would have been in jail. He would have been in jail, court convicted, and fast food express to prison by now. Because can you imagine the headline? Man shoots cop trying to do their job. The guy is black, the officer's white, the white female. And you could see her life. Oh, she was such a nice person. She served her community. News blotches every 30 seconds. American flag waving in the distance. Pictures of her, negative pictures of him. Then you get to the point to where he's in the orange jumpsuit, handcuffed, looking downtrodden. And then here goes the debate. Do I have the right to defend my home even though cops are invading? Keep in mind, in Tennessee, we actually had that happen. A while back, I want to say about 2 or 3 years ago, there was a man who was literally shot by police because they entered the wrong house. They were executing a search warrant, and the 70-year-old man was killed by cops and they had the wrong. Matter of fact, how do cops actually? Well, and that's what I said. When cops say they get the wrong house, I'm sorry. You go to my house, I don't know you, and especially you're coming at times for not visiting hours. Hell yeah, I'm gonna defend myself. But at the same time, it makes no sense to the point to where we now, and this is the thing that which kills me the most. You are literally trying to figure out what a person like Botham Jean was doing, instead of asking the woman who's alive that killed him in the first fucking place. Oh, the door was open. No, bitch, it wasn't. The door was ajar, but you said you had packages in front of your door. So how you know the door was ajar? He didn't listen to my commands. Bitch, you was in his house. Police or not, why do I gotta listen to you? You were the one who came in my door. But again, yep, it was Dana Loesch. Dana Loesch, thank you, BJ. Dana Loesch was the person that actually said that, because she sat there and said, and that's the NRA's excuse. The NRA's excuse is, had he had a weapon, he would still be alive. No, he wouldn't. Like Whoopi said, it was like he's a black man who killed a cop in Texas. Texas would have sat there and had him on death row before the end of the month. Only because of the fact of the matter is they try to sit there and say that. So it bothers me a little bit more, which when I saw that, and it made me, like I said, it hits more home to me than anything else, because I've seen character assassination. I've seen it done to a family member who wasn't able to speak for himself. And they tried their hardest. And I sat there and cussed out the lawyer. I cussed out the person they were defending. I cussed out the police department. I mean, I sat there and said to myself, for all you guys supposed to be doing your jobs, why in the world are you investigating the victim? You should be investigating the accused. Because when a victim dies, and it seems only in America, to where the victim who dies has the burden of proof against the accused that's living. And in this case, she's already admitted to it. But it's funny that they're charging her with manslaughter when it needs to be murder. Because you know why? She barged into a place not as a police officer. There were no signs of distress, no signs of discall. But you try to make excuses. Well, she came off a 14-hour shift. Well, yeah, blame that on lack of resources, and blame that on hiring enough staff, and blame that on the pay that you don't get. Well, she could have got the wrong apartment. Really? I've been going to the same apartment for almost 9 years. I've never got it wrong. I've never walked. And for all those like me who live in apartments, by a raise of thumbs up or thumbs down, how many of y'all ever gotten the wrong apartment going home? I know I haven't. I know where it is. It hasn't changed. The door locks haven't changed. My key still works. So it's a lot of bullshit. And the thing about it is, this is character assassination, and this is divide. And this is only setting up for when she goes to a grand jury, because the grand jury gets to decide whether or not to proceed forward with manslaughter or bump it up to murder, which at this point, anybody with brain cells can tell this is a murder. Now, whether or not that happens or not depends. But another part of the story that I wanted to go into, aside from reminding people that, yes, we are still being shot like an endangered species and care less for dogs who have more actual rights than we do, and that's fucking sad. But the other part about this, the police chief of Dallas, the one that sat there and said, we're going to get something done? Yeah. So, funny story about her. And it's kind of interesting it's being brought up, but I'll let it tell its own story.
We see this almost every day now, and today
Oh, wow. Apologize, guys. Apparently, Trump's not going to let us be great. But fuck that. We're going to keep that ball rolling. Okay, so I'm waiting for this video to load. So pretty much, for all those that don't know about the police chief. So the police chief and DA right now are sitting there are asking people to be patient. And before I play it, and I'm about to learn Strauss video again to make sure if it'll work, but when they say, and before I play this, it's like, it always amazes me so how they ask us to be patient. But check this out.
We see this almost every day now. And today, religious leaders gathered and marched outside the apartment where a police officer killed an innocent man. They want answers like why the officer still has a job.
Officer Amber Geiger continues to get paid by taxpayers, even though she's charged with manslaughter. This is Rebecca Lopez. She's live in the newsroom tonight. So, Rebecca, the chief of police said last night that Geiger cannot be fired yet. Is that true?
Well, last night, Chief Hall told a room full of citizens that she could not fire Amber Geiger because federal, state, and local laws prohibited her from doing that at this time. So we spent the entire day talking to multiple experts asking that question. They say there are no laws that prohibit the chief from conducting an internal affairs investigation to terminate Geiger. Multiple chiefs in the past have expedited investigations in controversial cases involving officers. Dallas Police Chief Renee Hall showed up at a meeting at Paul Quinn College to answer questions from concerned citizens. Many wanted to know why the chief hasn't fired Officer Amber Geiger, who shot and killed both of John in his apartment. Here is how she answered the question.
Because of the federal, state, and local laws surrounding purpose and the law, civil service laws, there are things that are in place that we have to do as a agency.
Justin Moore, a civil rights attorney, was a panelist at the meeting and was surprised by the chief's comments.
I was completely mystified, and I didn't really understand where this came from last night. It seemed as if Chief Hall might not have been well informed on the law.
The department's own general orders say the chief of police may circumvent all formal disciplinary procedures to render an immediate decision when she deems it necessary to preserve the integrity of the department. Officer Geiger is allowed due process, which means an internal affairs investigation is typically conducted. The Dallas Police Department has fired other officers while under criminal investigation, including Amy Wilbur, who shot a man in his car, and Cardan Spencer, who shot a mentally ill man standing in the street.
There's nothing that prevents a police chief from firing somebody on the spot, or at least launching an internal affairs investigation.
Dallas County District Attorney Faith Johnson, who now has the criminal case, says it's up to DPD to make firing decisions. She says her public integrity unit is focused on gathering evidence to present to a grand jury.
I am committed to getting to the truth. We will get to the truth, and the truth will be presented to the grand jury in this case.
We asked DPD to provide us the state and federal laws that Chief Hall mentioned last night. They did not do that. Instead, they gave us the same general order that we've been citing now for a couple of days, which do give her the ability to launch an internal affairs investigation. So we asked, is there an internal affairs investigation going on right now? They did not answer that question. Reporting live, Rebecca Lopez, Channel News.
Now, that alone should tell you everything you want to know. But the simple fact of the matter, to quote Don King, only in America to where they try to give us a black police chief and a black DA and tell black people, don't worry, please be patient. We're trying to get to the truth of this. We can't fire her. There's laws, there's civility, there's regulations, there are procedures. And you see my personal favorite is the brother behind the police chief was like, he's like, and I thought to myself, if I'm that guy and I see the police chief spout bullshit, I'm like, hey, hang on. Yeah, you can. You're the top cop. The chief of police does have the right. This is actually true in any municipal city. If the chief of police can terminate a law enforcement officer and circumvent all policies, if they determine it, Little Miss Good Hair, who was armed by you, is gonna sit there and tell the people that she's sworn to protect that she can't fire a murderer because there's procedure. Right. And then the DA has the nerve. The DA has the nerve to sit there and talk about we will get to the truth. But what truth is there? The cop murdered somebody. What more do you want? I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not. I've never been to law school, never picked up a law book. But I do know when the person confessed, you have the murder weapon, you have the evidence, you have the testimony, you have everything you need for what a lot of people call a slam dunk case. What more do we fucking want to know? She murdered somebody. She used her city deployed weapon in a situation that didn't call for it. That's not a police officer. That's a cop. That's a murderer with a badge. Case closed. There should be nothing more to it. On top of the fact of the matter is, I like to call it Tariq Nasheed, if you don't know who Tariq Nasheed is, because I forgot what he said. It was something he called where he says they'll put a black person in front of a black group, and that black person will sit there, and they do that as a way of saying, well, we can relate because I'm you and you're me, your mirror image or something like that. But pretty much, I hate the fact that a police chief could step outside the line and say, you know what? No, we're going to go ahead and terminate her. She's no longer an officer. Because no matter what, at the end of all this, her life's done. I mean, the police chief could do something so radical and do something, and it actually be so cool to see a police chief that actually has morals, that can sit there and go, my officer killed in cold blood. They're not an officer anymore as of now. Their pension is pulled. All this is gone. Thank you, Vaughn, a token Negro. So yeah, token Negro, that's what I was going to go with. Token Negro. Thank you, Vaughn. But it amazes me so that the DA is trying to talk about we need to get to the truth and that the crowd needs to be patient. Now, I've said it best. There's nothing wrong with marching and protesting, but like I always sat there and said, it gets to a point where you get tired of marching. I mean, there needs to be other actions done. Like I said, I've seen people right now are trying to run for office. People who never thought about running for office are actually doing it. And it's cool. It's wonderful because they sat there and said, if you want to do something to become part of the change. I get that. Doesn't work in law enforcement, but it does work in politics. Because let's also be honest, that chief of police right there is not the one in charge. You can sit there and say you are, but you're not. She knows. And it's kind of funny with the DA's like, and the DA says the same thing, which is interesting. When the DA is like, well, the police chief can make that. The Dallas Police Department can make that. She doesn't say the chief. She doesn't say the chief of police specifically. She says the DPD can make that choice. Really? The top cop is saying she can't do it. It's kind of, you know what it kind of reminds me of? It reminds me of a fucked up management that where if a decision comes down, it's like a hot potato. Nobody wants it, but everybody knows how to pass. You have nothing but Steph Curry's around there. Chef Curry with the wrist. That's all it is. But nobody wants to sit there and take that political bullet. You want to know why? Because they know at this point, it's almost like they don't want to lose their standing. Think about that for a second. A black police chief fires a white officer. Do you think they're going to be police chief next? Do you think they're going to be police chief by the next election? Probably not. A DA goes after a white cop and throws the book at him, and she gets it. Do you think they're going to be the DA by next election? Probably not. Because the simple fact of the matter is, it's like, and I hate to say this, the order of fraternal police is literally the most legal mob that we have in the U.S. They're the legal mob. They're covered no matter what. And it's obvious. I mean, you can go down the entire listing of black men that were killed, and I think only one cop so far has actually been charged and served for 15 years. And I still think that's not enough. Like I said before in the previous podcast, if a cop takes a life, then their life should be over. In the same sense that if a person kills a cop, their life should be over. Because they, let the punishment fit the crime. I mean, if you want to move on death row, then that's due process. But at the end of it all, yeah, their life should be over because you robbed somebody else of their life. But at the same time, as Black people, we are honestly getting sick and tired of being told to be patient and to wait. But the simple fact of the matter is that we're getting slaughtered out in the streets like we're modern day farm stock. So again, it's like when I hear people turn around and just sit there and go, he's like, well, be patient. They'll get to that eventually. Really? When? Because the simple fact of the matter is, you keep on saying that we're looking into answers, and it's just like, you're not going to get answers, because answers are what you're not looking for. Because you like you're right, Angie. It's like, I don't want to sit there and say, watch she get 5 to 10 with possibility of parole, because here's my thing. They are really too close to turning around and really saying what they want to say. And honestly, it's simple fact of the matter is that racism is showing its hand. Racism is showing its hand, and it's wearing a badge. Call it what you will. The problem is, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but as long as racism is out there, Black people are always going to have a prejudice against law enforcement, because that's the cycle. They are racist against us. We are prejudiced against them. And nothing changes until the other side, because it's always funny. It's always funny. An officer will sit there and say, well, if you just help us out by picking out the bad ones in your neighborhood, we'll get rid of them. A cop told me that one time. And my response to him was, okay, you start with your group first, then I'll start with mine. Never said shit to me for the rest of the day. Because some cops, like those NYPD cops, will call out the bad cops. But a lot of cops won't do it for fear of being pariahs, or fear of being, exiled, or, not getting assistance, what have you. But this is what I keep telling law enforcement. The reason why Black people have the issue with cops, because you guys will not sit there and basically join us. If you know there are bad cops, point them out. Say it. I guarantee you, if law enforcement officers started doing that, you would get a lot more support from Black people than you would think. But as long as you guys stay silent, silence is omission. So again, in this case, just like Sean Bell, just like Mike Brown, just like Trayvon Martin, I could keep Philando Castile, I could keep going down that list. And it's sad that we have a fucking list. It's sad we have a fucking list. That alone should say enough as it is right there. But moving on to the last thing that I'm going to talk about tonight. Again, with the tariffs, where a lot of people don't understand. And I'm trying, and I say, now I know tariffs is a big thing. Now, for those who don't know what tariffs are basically taxes on goods and services. And you're probably asking yourself, why the fuck are we talking about it? Okay, understandably so. The reason why is because a lot of things are about to go up. As you know, Trump actually put a lot of tariffs out on goods that are being exported out from the U.S. to other places. And in return, other countries are actually raising tariffs on us. So for those that understand how this will work, let me give you an idea of what happens, because I always said it best. Because you want to know how tariffs affect people, you look at all these things. Because Trump talked about saving jobs and whatnot. Here's what's about to happen if those tariffs do stick around.
How much of your business have you lost to China?
On large scale orders, we've lost 100% of our business.
100%?
100%.
So all of it.
Yes.
Gary Hartman has spent most of his life working at Cheetah Chassis and says he's watched the company go from one of the world's biggest manufacturers of chassis for shipping containers to barely breaking even.
There are not a lot of heavy steel manufacturers left in this country, and we've been able to survive. It's difficult, but we're still here.
So Hartman took tens of thousands of dollars from his own company for one trip to Washington, D.C.
We talked to the people that actually work in our factory, and we said, should we go after this, or should we just, let it go and not get on the tariff list?
That trip to Washington had the full support of his employees. The tens of thousands of dollars was for a lawyer who helped him testify in front of the U.S. Trade Office about President Trump's proposed 25% tariff on nearly 1,300 goods from China. While most companies were trying to get their products off the tariff list, Hartman was trying to get chassis on it.
A list of products to be subject to additional duties.
It's a last-ditch effort for the company. In the last 2 decades, Cheetah has laid off 65% of its employees. The company also only buys U.S. steel and Prices are up about 40% this year in anticipation of the tariffs put on Chinese steel and aluminum. But its biggest threat has been a Chinese chassis maker, CIMC, which has engulfed more than 80% of the North American chassis market.
Well, we're not in the same playing field because we're a U.S. company, privately held, and the United States just doesn't subsidize manufacturers like China does.
You know that there's always going to be competition, domestic or abroad.
Right. Yeah, we can compete on a level playing field. We've done it with a manufacturer in Mexico, but it's not a level playing field, so you really can't compete.
I'm sorry they feel that way.
Frank Sunzala is the president of the Chinese competitor CIMC and argues that even with a 25% tariff, Cheetah couldn't make enough product to support U.S. demand.
And if we are hurt by the so-called tariffs, we'll find a way to continue to manufacture chassis, and we'll still get market share because we are the innovators in this industry.
Is getting on this tariff make or break for this company?
It's going to be a lot harder to stay in business if we don't.
Hartman hasn't forgotten that he and many of his employees here in Pennsylvania helped elect President Trump for the promise he made them to keep the doors open at businesses like Cheetah.
He sold us on, I'm going to help you with that trade issue. And people remember it. People in this factory remember it. You know, if we can't do something, whether it's this tariff or if it's something else to help us have a fair playing field, level field with China, you know, I'm not sure people are going to buy into it in 4 years.
And that alone should sit there and tell you a lot. That right there should say volumes, mind you. You know, because the reason why I bring that up, because that same manufacturing plant, Donald Trump was on his campaign tour and had sat there and said that American steel is coming back. Bullshit. We stopped producing steel. We stopped producing heavy manufacturing because China, Japan, Indonesia, India, all these other countries who don't pay their workers shit could produce more and cheaper and faster than what we can get homegrown. Because homegrown means you pay more. If you get it overseas, it's cheaper. So if you're going by gay capitalism, it's going to go to where they can get the most profit, which in this case happens to be overseas. What does that actually mean for home? Well, if these tariffs continue to be enacted, which by now they are very active. And the thing about it is where the part that a lot of people don't get, tariffs are job killers. I know the word job killer gets thrown out around a lot, especially when you get around Republicans. Republicans will sit there and say, well, you know, raising the minimum wage, well, that's a job killer. You know, if we do universal health care, that's a job killer. Or, you know, job killer, you know, this hurts the small businesses. Keep in mind, nothing that they have said has actually supported that fact. But tariffs, because these are what kill small businesses. Small businesses can't compete with larger corporations because larger corporations have a lot more resources, a lot more money, a lot more staying power than the average small business. So, you know, it's just like saying, for example, let's just say for example, Amazon has a grocery store in your hometown, but you still have your mom and pop's Piggly Wiggly, Apple Barn, what have you, the place you've been going to since you've been a kid. Amazon brings money and corporate backing, and they can get stuff faster, and it could be cheaper, and it could be more convenient. How do you expect that mom and pop store to stick around? You can call it the level, you can call it fair market competition if you like, but what Trump is doing with the tariffs is a job killer. You've seen it because he's actually, I mean, that goes back on his campaign promise about bringing things back. I'm going to bring back the coal industry. You can't. The coal industry is a dead industry. Simple fact of the matter is, to me, people are getting black lung from it and not getting the appropriate healthcare coverage from it. At the same time, the coal industry itself is actually adding to the climate change, which leads these supercells that we're getting from these hurricanes, earthquakes, heating. I mean, forget the fact the North and South Pole are about to become the biggest pools that we've ever had on this earth. But again, it amazes me so that this is why I say things like this need to be brought to attention. tariffs, as far as coming out, are definitely a terrible thing, because the countries that are actually sending their goods to us are going to tax us. And just the way just the way profits and capitalism goes, somebody at the end of all this is getting paid. And not to quote Kanye West, but the white man gets rich off of all of that. So it amazes me so that when I tell people, it's like, you don't understand, this trade is a bad idea. And people go, well, no, because I've gotten a little bit more of my paycheck since those tax cuts went in. And I'm like, you got $1.50. Most people got 75 cents. The only ones that actually saw tax breaks is that your income is in the 7 or 8 figure range. Or you're a corporation that had to pay zero taxes but got plenty of profits in which you didn't have to pay back to your shareholders. Yay, capitalism! So there's another video, the last video I'm going to show, to basically explain how tariffs work. And I'm glad I found this. So if you're a beer drinker, this is probably going to affect you. If you're not a beer drinker, you're going to understand. Hopefully this video will shed some light on why tariffs are such a bad idea. So let's hope this plays.
To do with this? Well, Americans drink a lot of beer, and new tariffs from the Trump administration could make the cost of subs go up. President Trump thinks that foreign trading partners are taking advantage of the US. So this year, the president announced tariffs on imports into the US, including on aluminium used to make beer cans.
Tariff actions taken by the president are necessary to revive America's essential steel and aluminum industries.
Overnight, every ton of the raw metal entering the US was 10% more expensive. And while most cans sold in America are made in the US, about a third of the aluminium in those cans comes from abroad. With the tariffs in place, cans will cost 5 cents more by the time they're sold to the consumer, according to John Dunham, an economic analyst. Now, 5 cents may not sound like much, but when you consider American brewers sell 36 billion cans and bottles per year, 5 cents adds up quickly. The Can Manufacturers Institute estimates metal tariffs will add up to an additional $1.1 billion that consumers or the industry will have to cough up. So it's not just beer drinkers who will be impacted. Many Americans rely on beer for their livelihoods. The beer industry employs nearly 70,000 workers and creates some 2.2 million jobs. Industry lobbying group, the Beer Institute, estimates that a 10% tariff on imported aluminium could force the layoff of about 20,300 workers in the world of US beer. And while not everyone's a big drinker,
I never had a drink. I never had a glass of alcohol.
Millions others will feel the impact of these tariffs firsthand.
So hopefully that has actually, and I wanted to bring that up because, like I said, that's just one industry. I mean, beer itself, like I said, I'm not a beer drinker. I'm more of a bourbon and scotch kind of guy. But for all of the do drink beer, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's going to affect everything: metal, plastic, even Coke products, food, you name it. Everything that usually comes in and out of the U.S. is going to cost more, which means you're going to be spending more, which means less income, which means it takes away from something. Now, if this doesn't scream that the president that we have right now is a fucking idiot, then I got nothing. I mean, there's nothing more I can say to convince people. It's the reason why I sit there and like the last thing I'm going to say about all this is that, like I said, midterms are coming up next month. How people may feel about voting, I understand. People say, well, I don't think my vote matters. You know, as long as electoral college is in place, nothing I do matters. Let me point out something. Lack of voting got us Trump. I need to repeat that. Lack of voting got us Trump. We can sit there and say that the Democratic National Committee screwed Bernie Sanders. We can sit there and say that, you know, Hillary Clinton was a far better candidate than Trump. Because the simple fact of the matter is she's been a first lady. She's been a senator. She's been a secretary of state. She's been around that White House longer than most first ladies. Again, you had a clear choice, albeit I'm a Bernie Sanders guy. I'm not a Hillary Clinton person. But when it came down to voting, it wasn't a lesser of two evils for me. It was pick an idiot who's never held a political office in his life, or go with the woman who has held three positions in government and is an accomplished lawyer. I mean, really not much of a no-brainer there. But again, aside from Russian interference, when you look at the voting from the last election, almost close to 40 to 45% of our population didn't vote. Think about that for a second. 40 to 45% didn't vote. And Trump still got beat in the popular vote. But because we have electoral college, and this is why, I mean, I can go into a whole nother discussion of why the electoral college needs to be done away with, and we just need to stick to the popular vote, just like other countries have done. I mean, I think we're one of 5 countries that still has electoral college. Every other country goes by popular vote. And you're right, Vaughn. She had 2 million more votes, and it's the electoral college because the electoral college was only set up for not to go into it, but I'm gonna go a little bit into it. The electoral college was pretty much set up for a predetermined population. We've exceeded that because, okay, for instance, let's just say like the U.S. population right now is bigger than 270 million. When the electoral college was actually brought up and designed, it was only set up for a certain population of 20 to 20. It was set up for a population of 20 to 45 million max, because it took into account the number of votes and delegate votes that would be counted per state. So it's amazing to me that we've exceeded that estimated population of the system work. We've exceeded it 3 times over. We do need to get rid of the electoral college. But until that day happens to where we can actually abolish the electoral college and go off popular vote, folks, if anything I'm going to say, because I'm going to keep harping on this in every podcast that I'll do from here on out, is that if you have the ability, vote. Seriously. Because I don't know about y'all, but I can't do it all. I can't, another 4 years of this shit? No. Hell no. If we can get Trump out, and like I said, I'm not saying it's going to happen. Forgive me, I'm not foreshadowing this. I'm not saying if the Democrats get the House and the Senate that their first thing is going to be to move toward impeachment. That's going to be on the Democrats. I mean, I would hope that they would do that if they get both houses, but if they get both the House and the Senate. But again, all pure speculation. What we can do as citizens, aside from running from office from ourselves, I do highly, highly, highly implore you as Americans to vote. Simply being because, I'm going to use this. Here's not voting got us Trump. Voting got us Obama. Just saying. You want another 4 years of Trump? Don't vote. Matter of fact, don't do anything. But if you want to change something, even a change is voting is still change. A pebble being thrown in a lake still makes some pretty big ass ripples. But at the same time, this is why I stress heavily to vote. I mean, like I said, it's a choice that every American can make. But at this point, we all got to start doing something. And like I said, we can talk about it, just like I talk about this podcast. We can talk about different things. Like you've seen everybody here. You've seen Vaughn, and you've seen Angie. You've seen BJ. You've seen Carla. All you guys, thank you guys for watching. And also thank you guys who haven't commented but are still watching. I know you're out there because you guys like to comment me after the podcast, which is cool. But, rather you talk to me now. That's fine. But again, this is why I sit there and say informing people and informing is empowering. For the simple fact of the matter is, I've said it many times, an informed community can make better decisions than an uninformed community. But to be informed, you have to look for the information and actually make sure the information is correct before you tell somebody else. I mean, you do have to treat it in the same way like you're playing telephone. When you play telephone, you ever play telephone when you were as a kid? Where when y'all were doing these little team building exercises that you pass on a message and it keeps going down the line, down the line, down the line. And, you might sit there and say, well, my cat has at the start of it, you might say my cat has a blue collar. By the end of it all, it might say that I want a number 7 from Sonic. The message gets lost. But if everybody's out there trying to to search for the same information and they find it and it's true and they pass it on to someone else and they do the same thing and the same thing after that, and the same thing after that, same thing after that, then that's where informing works. Then we can actually begin to really make ground on that. But again, and I'll stress this heavily, lack of voting and participation got us Trump. We can change that. I hope, it is my sincere hope that you change that. But again, from all this, and just to wrap this all up, it's the fact of the matter is this week, honestly, between an idiot president trying to do meteorology, from a murder case that needs to go ahead and move on to prosecution, to whether or not that, yeah, you're probably going to be paying a lot more down the road for the same products you have now. I'm not saying this is unregulated capitalism, but right now, the only people that are benefiting from this is that if you have at least 500, if you have at least an eight-figure income, you're not hurting. But again, just like me and Vaughn talked about not too long ago, there is no such thing as middle class now. That income gap might as well be as big as the goddamn Grand Canyon. But things can change. And not the shit that, I'm sorry, guys. Trump still wants to get us in the end. But again, guys, wonderful things can happen if we decide to come together. But that also being said, where I talked about hurricanes and, Hurricane Maria is still a disaster. Florence is a disaster. Let's not forget about Flint, Michigan. That's still a disaster, which I've yet to see one person still go to trial for, because that's genocide, in my opinion. And then let's not also forget that we still have kids of immigrant families still sitting in ICE detention centers, like concentration camps. So many things wrong about our country, and this is why I sit there and tell people why I always quote the newsroom so much. America is not the greatest country in the world. There's no sufficient evidence to prove that, but we can be, but not at this rate. So as fracked up as it's been so far, I only fear that unless actions are being taken, it's only going to, I'm not going to say get worse or get better, but until we all decide to come together and actually make changes, then this is where we're at. But we're going to go ahead and end it here for right now. End it here for the night, guys. Thanks for all watching. Thomas, you've been on for more than an hour. How did I see this just now? I don't know. Notifications, I guess. Anyway, thanks, Thomas. I know you jumped in. Sorry, dude. But hey, you can go back and watch it if you like. And speaking of going back and watching it, about this podcast, aside from how the Frack We Got Here, I do have also the podcast Off Limit podcast, where nothing is off limits. It's usually every Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m. It might be a little bit later this week as I'm expecting a full house. So again, also be unaware of that, because like I said, on Off Limits, we do talk about anything and everything. And, it's bound to offend somebody, but our job is not to offend, it's to inform. So aside from that, speaking of Vaughn, who's also watching this, Vaughn also has shows himself. He also has the I Get That Reference VSTs, which are, if you know what VST is, 30-minute podcast, which he goes over various news as far as video games, what's out there, comments, things about that nature. He also has Rhythm This, which actually was just yesterday. Rhythm This week, reminiscing over the rhythm, where he likes to go over certain albums that are coming out, and he goes to a 3-tier system. Actually, it's 4 tiers, but we can't say what the 4-tier is on this podcast. But if you want to know what that 4-tier rating system is, then go to Rhythm This, where you can actually be on there and actually do it from there. He also has the Random as with Uncle VZ. God, that was God, that kind of hurt my lungs a little bit. Sorry about that. He does have the Random as Flood with Uncle VZ, which Vaughn, you're going to put down there. I forgot. I kind of toned out for a second from lack of oxygen from the brain from doing that title. But Random as Fuck is usually when Vaughn usually has his little 30 to 45 minutes to where he goes over videos and things of that nature. And it's all interactive. And like the last video, which please don't do the old man trying to rap in the booth. I can't take that. I can't take that no more. But again, these are all these are all these are all interactive shows, just like mine, where he loves to talk to people. Because, like I said, I'm a social person. He's a social person. We like talking to people. We want to get opinions. We want to engage you, is what we're trying to do, and that's what we hope to do. And as you can see from them talking about me yesterday, I was a little bit extra because, let's be honest, P. Pablo and Bubba Sparks fell the fuck off. But that's a whole other story. But aside from that, my other brother Trace, he actually has the Bump Down. Bump Down is also a musical show where he actually goes over what's on the charts, what's not, what's happening in the mainstream underground. And also he has conversations with him and Vaughn, who are also on the show. Okay, sorry about that, guys. And Trace is a very intelligent guy. I said it best. You know, a lot of people, when they hear Trace honestly is a very intelligent guy. And he does find some interesting articles and subjects to go over. And honestly, if you haven't heard it, if you don't know who the man is, honestly, give it a shot. And also, all of our podcasts are all found under the I Get That Reference page on Facebook, which you have to be watching this on Facebook right now unless you're on Instagram, which you're also seeing my ugly mug there too. But if you're on Facebook and don't know what I Get That Reference is, I Get That Reference is basically our Facebook group. It is open to all. When I mean all, I mean everybody. Doesn't matter what you are, who you want to be, or if you're, want to do the Caitlyn Jenner route. Not judging, but just saying you're welcome. Pretty much, it's a group for all. The only thing that we do ask is that you be active and participate. By participate, we mean post, we mean ask questions, we mean just talk to other people. Use the social skills is what I'm saying. So again, if you look on Facebook, type in I Get That Reference, we'll be the only group that pops up. You can join us and join in all the fun stuff that we try to do when we try to bring on there, and again, go from there. Also on the YouTube pages, because we're also all on YouTube. So if you actually look up I Get That Reference, if you look up How the Frack We Got Here, if you look up I Get That Reference, if you look up the Bump Down, yes, Trace has also joined us. We also have all YouTube pages where we post all of our podcasts there, where you can like, share, subscribe, and you can actually share with others. Because like I said, I love when people come up to me and say, "Hey, I didn't know you had a podcast," and I'm already mad at you, which is a weird way of saying thank you. Possibly. Trust me, I've ticked off a lot of people. But all that, like I said, we all actually have YouTube pages. Thank you, Vaughn, for posting that. I really appreciate that. So that way you can show where all the channels are. Also, speaking of Vaughn, he does have Audio Mac, so I believe it's in Vaughn. Also post that down there if I'm wrong too. It is www.audiomack.com/bigbza. Please tell me, Vaughn, if I'm right or not. If not, please post the correct link down there, but I'm almost 85% sure I'm right. Where he actually has audio versions of the I Get That Reference podcast. So if you can't view it, then you can listen to it. Hey, it's like having your own little audio phone. And also, Vaughn does have the calendar of his shows also on the I Get That Reference page. I need to do the same thing as well with the How the Frack We Got Here and the Off Limits. And also the last two things we want to mention before I get off this shindig, the I Get That Reference gaming podcast. We are going to have that on a more constant basis. Hopefully have a new one by this Sunday or Saturday evening, depending if we can work that out. And also we are going to do another podcast, which is in the works. I'm going to discuss this with Sir Thomas because this is going to involve him. And yes, Thomas, this is going to involve you, sir. So, yeah, you've been informed. Sorry, but yeah, that's another working title in progress. But mainly what we're all trying to do here, guys, is that we're just trying to build this community of information, whether it's entertainment, whether it's politics, whether it's just talking about things that honestly you wouldn't normally talk about, simply put, because you're always afraid of getting looked at wrong or afraid of being judged or whatnot. All we're basically trying to do is bring a light to the situation and just trying to have fun with it. Because just like I said because I always say on How the Frack We Got Here, yes, it's fucked up about the world we live in, but just like everything else, it can change with us. It involves all of us. As long as all of us are involved, then change can happen. But when there's only one person involved, you might as well be yelling at the brick wall. But that being said, thank you guys for all watching. Like I said, thank you, Angie. Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Thomas. I know, you just got a notification. Apologies. But thank you all, guys, and BJ especially, and also BJ, you too. Thank you guys for all watching. Like I said, on the playback, if you're watching this, whether on YouTube or on Facebook, still comment because I still want to get everybody's opinions, especially you Trump supporters. I know you're watching out there. I know you're watching out there, Trump supporters. You still got your Magna hat and you still want to have a talk with me, but you're so afraid to come out because you think I'm going to put you on blast. I'm not. But I still want to have a conversation with you because as you can see what everybody else has done, nobody's offended. And that's the thing about it. We don't try to offend, but if truth offends you, then yes, you're going to be offended. But again, guys, this has been How the Frack We Got Here. Thank you guys for all sticking around. I know it's a little bit on the late side. My apologies. Things got backed up today. Hopefully, we'll definitely be better about it. Hopefully, I'll have a calendar up soon. Hopefully, I'll have better graphics. And at the same time, have a little bit more of a studio feel once I get my ducks in a row. But again, guys, I've been Will Buchanan. This has been How the Frack We Got Here. Hope you guys have a good night. Hopefully, things get better. Remember to vote next month. Peace.